Welcome to Forestry Now, where we explore the forces impacting profitable and sustainable management of commercial forests and natural woodlands. I'm Dermot McNally. Two things on the agenda today. Firstly, a short bit of housekeeping about the summer break. And secondly, for those who are new or recent listeners, this podcast includes an overview of key takeaways since I launched the show. Firstly, the housekeeping. Just to say, there'll be no new podcasts until September 2026. This will give me a chance to catch up on managing my own forests and also to plan for the next season of interviews. So make sure you're subscribed and you'll be notified of the newest episodes once they release. And also, if you haven't already liked or rated the podcast, please be a legend and do so. It helps the show to find new listeners and it's great for my ego too. So thanks for that. Now, a few of the main takeaways from season 1 of the podcast. Firstly, half of my guests to date are forest owners who also work in the sector, so that gives them an extra perspective. The big takeaway is simply that it pays to spend time in your forest so you can get the most from it, be that timber, nature enhancement, or simply for your own pleasure and enjoyment. Two great interviews that typify this are with Olive Leavy and another with Sean O Conluain, who both describe their experiences using Continuous Cover Forestry Principles. Another forest owner, Brendan Guinan, spoke to me about his approach to agroforestry in an established plantation, and that's a great episode for anyone who wants to combine timber and food outputs from their forest. Two powerful storms hit Ireland in December 24 and January 25, and in falling timber, falling prices, I spoke with Victor Barber from Western Forestry. This episode was a great overview of the huge challenges the Irish sector has been facing, cleaning up 3 years' worth of harvest. If there's a lesson here for me, it's that owners of semi-mature forests should get roads in early and try to have a valid felling licence on hand just in case disaster strikes in the future. Forestry can sometimes come in for bad press, but there's clearly been huge improvements in environmental standards in Ireland since the 1990s when timber maximisation was the norm. Listen to my interview with Paul Lafferty in afforestation in the 1990s for a taste of what it was like back then, and because Paul is an auctioneer specialising in forestry, we discuss what forests are selling for today. There's lots of good news stories. Alan McCabe explained how efforts are underway to remove conifers that are spreading on blanket bogs and how Ireland's bogs are slowly being re-wet, which is good for carbon capture and for the catchments they sit above. Lots also to be cheerful about in terms of home trees work at a landscape level, maximising state and local landowner engagement to deliver environmental and societal benefits. Ray O'Fowlu was my guest there. Also, for a whistle-stop 500-year history of native woodlands in Ireland, have a listen to my conversation with Joe Gowran from Woodlands of Ireland. Joe is an absolute expert on all things native woodland planting and management. If you're more interested in what happens after the forest gate, then listen to my second conversation with John Sherlock. That episode is called Firewood, Bespoke Timber Products and Small-Scale Sawmilling. We discuss how his firewood business got started and has now evolved into sawmilling and bespoke manufacture. More recently, Kenny McCauley, Leitrim business owner, told me everything about what it takes to run a biomass business and how his product is fueling Ireland's renewable heat market. Farming advisors are a critical part of the afforestation story in Ireland, as they're often the first point of contact for landowners thinking of planting trees. That's why I spoke to Andy Dunn, farm advisor, who joined me for Where Farming Meets Forestry. Andy's perspective is unique, and he has many examples of how Ireland's restrictive and rigid afforestation licensing process can lead to unintended negative consequences. Equally insightful was my chat with Dr. Zhu, who recently completed groundbreaking research, which we discuss in detail in Barriers to Afforestation in Ireland. This interview is an absolute must for anyone interested in why Ireland can't plant enough new forests. Then, for forest owners who have a timber crop coming to market, it could be time to think about certifying your forest under FSC or PEFC systems. Catherine Lucy from the IFO joined me to explain how group certification works. I went international with some guests. In an episode titled How Forestry Lost the PR Battle, Peter Hashulu, a Hungarian forest engineer and industry analyst, explained in simple terms how the forestry sector failed to communicate its sustainability credentials and how that has led to public confusion surrounding sustainable timber harvesting. The contrast to that episode was my conversation with Douglas McMillan, who joined me for Reimagining Scottish Forestry. Douglas delivers a sharp critique of corporate monoculture conifer plantations, which he says dominate Scotland's rural landscape. He advocates for a range of changes that, he says, will spread the benefits of forestry more widely. That episode has led to some industry pushback, and my plan is to do an interview to tell the other side of the story. Finally, my most recent episode was with Eva Lisa Hinaro, who joined me to discuss carbon markets for forest owners. She explains in simple and accessible terms the background to emerging carbon markets and what forest owners who want to sell carbon credits need to be aware of. So, it was a busy and interesting first season. Lots to catch up on here if you're just finding the podcast. I'll be back, as I say, in September 2026. Until then, take care and get into the woods.